Hello, and welcome to Shatter Our Souls with Novaria. Now, if you've been around the block, you know the drill by now. Today, we are tackling the circuit races as well as the lap knockouts of Blacklist number 2, both. And what is there to say except we're getting there? This is the ultimate best version of the Lexus that we can get, and if I'm being honest, I'm excited to see the finale. I want to see this through right to the end with a 100% completion rate. And I'll be honest, I am questioning whether or not it's possible. No, that's not it. I have stopped questioning whether or not it's possible. There you go. That's the accurate answer. Because if I'm being as honest and real about this as possible, the Lexus has proven itself time and time again. And the only oddball circumstances were the odd photo radar ticket. So I'm liking the odds. And if I'm being honest, I want a proper remaster, not a remake of this game. And the reason I want a remaster is because the engine that this game runs on is fairly unique. And I would love to see this game be given a graphical update. Just a graphics update. The original remake of Need for Speed Most Wanted that they made was absolutely beautiful. But the issue was that they changed up too much of what the game's identity was. The result is that Rockport, instead of Blacklist 15, had like Blacklist 10, and ended up with numerous issues that made very little sense for this game. And while I'm being as abundantly clear as possible, I would like to see a graphical update because I believe this city would be absolutely phenomenally gorgeous. But that's one small detail. The game itself, I would love if the physics remained the same. Now, let me be as clear as possible. I believe that the physics and the jank that this game came with made it a absolute blast to play. But the physics and jank the physics of the updated version for the 2012 release was stiff. You could crash into a police vehicle and they would end up just kind of moving out of the way. You'd shove them a little bit. Whereas the version that we got for the GameCube, PS2 sent vehicles flying sometimes a block and a half away. It was beautiful. It had weight. It had power to it. And well, yeah, it's not exactly the most realistic. It feels good. There is, however, one update or change that I would like to see. And this is me being a little bit of a how do I put it? I'd like to see it simply because I think that it would be fun, not because I believe that it would be worthwhile, so to speak. And it is, I would like to see a either side mode or a new type of race called Rush Hour. Now, if you have played some of the more arcadey versions of the franchise, you might know what I'm talking about. Rush Hour is a mode in which 100 racers get on a track. And effectively, it would do away with the naming system for a little bit. You play and you race the track until you either reach the very front of the pack or until you fall behind enough that you can't get to the front. And in this way, it would have increasing rewards depending on what placement you got. Rush Hour is very much you get to try your hand at being or getting through this traffic jam as a racer. And I think that the physics as well as the gameplay in and of itself would allow for a lot of variation in gameplay in these circumstances. That's my opinion on it. It doesn't have to happen, but it would be one that I think would have very interesting end results. Anyways, that is the end of the first track. We're going to play it again, except backwards. And I honestly, every track kind of has that a little bit of love thrown into it. Yes, they made a track, they made the reverse of that track. But it was never with the intent of the track being more boring or changing things up too much. It was with the mentality of using resources as we had. So, a good example of this is if you look at the texturing problems with the Nintendo 64, they had to be very careful with how they used textures throughout the game. Because too much and they would end up overloading the memory system of the N64 and you'd end up with a problem. This doesn't have that problem. Not as much. But to make the most out of their game, they had to make sure that they could do A and B, B and C, and so on and so forth. So almost every track has a forward and a reverse track. The reverse is just you start at the other end of the track or you flip over which direction your car started. That's all it is. That's all it's ever been. But the fact that it exists at all says a lot about the fact that this world is built with the player in mind, but it was built to be playable and enjoyable regardless of whichever direction you travel in. And yes, this is the nature of racing, but I gotta give them credit where credit is due. You know, I admit, right now it is the beginning of December, mid of December, and it's a frozen wasteland outside right now. And while I personally wouldn't like to be driving in this, the fact of the matter is that I think that there is a lot of missed potential in racing games for weather. If you look at Need for Speed Underground, Underground 2, Carbon, Most Wanted, Pro Street, every single one of them has a clean, fresh racetrack for you to race on. The alternative races, there was never any weather to worry about in those games. And I believe that getting a chance to race through a sandstorm or a blizzard would be kind of a spectacle in and of itself, but would probably require a lot more rendering, if I'm being as honest as possible. But it would also be able to give the devs a chance to play around with the physics in a way that I don't believe that they've been able to as of yet. Because driving on snow and ice is not easy. It never has been, it never will be. So having a track designed around it where if you take something too fast, your vehicle slides off the track would, I think, be a really interesting way of showcasing a different style of play. Something that I don't believe they've dug into too deeply. Now, yes, I know it is something that they dealt with at some point or another within the newer Need for Speeds. I know it's something that the Dirt franchise has gotten into. But it's something that I think could add some much needed variety to this type of game. So, I don't know. It's one of those try, see what happens type of things, not a demand. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Is that something that you think could be functional, or is it something that might not fully pan out the way I have in mind? Well, that's not good. We are at about halfway through the second track here. Hoofty. And things are going pretty well overall. Oh, there we go. Thank goodness it's a 3-lap race, or I'd be having to reset here. A little piece about this game as a whole. I know that I have been posting victory after victory after victory. And starting at, I believe, Baron, I was getting worn out from having to, or from putting failures up. And the reality is that this game is a lot harder than these videos will make it out to be. And the reason behind that is because I don't want to waste the viewer's time. And as a individual who has been playing this game, I can tell you that some of the races that start on this take 5 to 6 attempts to get that victory. Now, admittedly, a lot of these are a first try round, but the ones that are 5 to 6 races, you don't see all the attempts. You don't see me slamming my head against a brick wall attempting these tricks. And I want to acknowledge that this isn't as easy as it looks. That if you were to attempt this yourself, you are going to end up with a lot of frustrating moments. You are going to end up with questioning whether or not it's possible. And the reality is that everything seems impossible until it's done. So don't let those small frustrations get in your way. Show what you're made of. Make sure that this game kneels before the king that is the player. Because that's what I want people to acknowledge in this channel as a individual in a public space. You've got this. We've got this. And while yes, gaming is something totally different than a lot of circumstances that people deal with, the reality is that perseverance is key in any situation. And I believe that with enough perseverance, anything is truly possible. But that's enough rambling for now. Round 3 is complete-ish. In 3, 2, 1. There we go. Heading into round 4. Now, we have a bit of a longer track here. And so, getting on what I was saying, the original footage for this video was originally over an hour. And this, as well as the next race I'm going to be showcasing, were multiple attempts. The next race, I ended up taking out 4 failed attempts at it. So, it's not impossible. Nothing ever is. But there comes a level of timeline and actually focusing in on this that causes it to be a little bit harder than one might initially expect. Now, anywho, right behind me I've got what sounds like either a Ford GT, a McLaren, or a Carrera GT. That is definitely the Carrera GT. I gotta say, it is a very nice looking car, but I admit that it's one of those vehicles that I've never been too good with. In my original profile of this game that ended up beating Ronnie, I was ecstatic. I had finally done it. I'd gotten every single vehicle in the game. And the first thing I did was I got the Carrera GT. And admittedly, I did it by selling absolutely everything else I owned. And this happened to be a huge mistake, because neither myself nor any of the people that I knew at the time were able to make it through a track with the Carrera GT. And for a long time, I didn't understand why. And if I were to put on a Carrera GT and start playing it right this instant, I'm pretty sure I could make a bit of a dent. But the reality is that I got myself way too invested in smaller details, or in the fact that I had made it to the end, and never really paid enough attention to the fact that the vehicles that I was driving were dramatically different. That the Carrera GT, for all it was good, or all the good it had, was unable to truly showcase. I was unable to truly showcase what made it so unique or so fun to drive, so challenging and whatnot. Because I couldn't beat any tracks with it, aside from like the early game point to point, the time trials, the toll booth time trials. And to be able to get a car I could use again, technically, all I would have had to do was blast through each of the time trials starting at the beginning and working my way through it. But I was young, impressionable, and easy to frustrate, and I didn't end up doing that. And that was a shame. Ironically, I think it came from the fact that the way I beat Need for Speed Carbon was by way of selling my final vehicle and seeing what happened. Wait, what? Two Scars is 13,000 feet behind? That... what? What do you mean he's stuck somewhere? How did he fall so... I don't even see him on the map. Wait. Why is he... is he doing donuts? He's genuinely doing donuts right now. Half a lap behind. Oh my goodness. I don't think I've ever seen that before. So apparently, Two Scars has given up on this race because, oh, he's stuck in the underground. So there's an underground parking lot in an area that, underneath these two buildings here, and he's stuck underneath it. Oh, wait, maybe? Okay, he got himself unstuck when I got closer, but that doesn't really do much. Anywho, in Need for Speed Carbon, I had beat every challenge up until fighting Darius. And while I could beat Darius in general with the Ford GT, I could never actually beat Darius. And I had, attempted this for about 2 weeks. And at one point, I had a buddy of mine over. We attempted to beat Darius together. And we couldn't. We slammed ourselves against that for hours. Finally, I got fed up and took a little bit of a breather, let my friend have a chance at it, or crack at it. When I came back, my friend had a totally new vehicle. Now, this vehicle ended up becoming one of my favorites of all time, the Plymouth Hemi Cuda. But to be able to afford it Holy moly, he was 3 minutes behind. To be able to afford the Plymouth Hemi-Cuda, we ended up having to sell everything. Now, while I definitely say that my friend could have, talked about it first, um, being able to have that chance to try something totally different that ended up working in the end, I think says a lot. If I would have kept going with the Carrera GT, I would have been fine. But I was stubborn in the wrong way. Anywho, that's my 2 cents. So this race I attempted minimum of 5 times. Most of my failed attempts of this race ended up failing in the first, or at the end of the second to third lap. So to say that it was challenging is the small stuff. Most of the enemies in this lap knockout fell into one of 3 categories. Either they ran into the wall early on, I ran into a wall too late, or simply I just had bad luck and couldn't get ahead of them. The reality is that this particular set of tracks is uniquely difficult in ways that I don't believe get mentioned very often. First and foremost, when dealing with these longer tracks, this is how do I put it? It's a battle of attrition. It's a battle of stamina. A single mistake in this track for me could spell disaster for this race. I could go from first to last place in moments. And that's kind of the hard part about dealing with this type of game, is that anything that happens in a long, drawn-out track will come back to bite me later. Or could come back to bite me. A longer track like this, I may end up getting really good luck, really bad luck, or something in between. There's no real way of saying, yeah, this is going to work and here's how. So, in my opinion, this is kind of what makes or breaks a race, or a video game track in general. And so, I believe, truly, that Need for Speed Most Wanted's biggest challenges are not necessarily tests of skill, but are the tests of endurance. If a single mistake is all it takes, and a track takes 10 minutes, you have to play flawlessly for that full 10 minutes. And that is what makes some of these tracks as hard as they are, because you have no way of really showcasing just how strong your opponents are. Or you have to struggle against your opponents for that length of time. And a simple reset here or there isn't the end of the world by any means. But if that one mistake ends your entire race, you have to start back from scratch right off the bat and try it right from the very beginning once again. Also, just realized that both of my opponents are driving Carrera GTs right now, and both of them slammed into a wall. Score 1 for the Lexus, I guess. It's one of those... If I changed my vehicle right this instant, I believe that I would not have any real success at being able to beat any bosses going forward, or really any tracks. And it's because the change in the vehicle's handling and physics in general would change how my reactions would have to be. Having played the game and beaten every single track up to this point with the same vehicle means I am dealing with a car that I know very well. And if I were to change my vehicle right now, to something that fits a different niche, I would end up with struggling against my preformed habits that make or break would make or break a race for me. Anywho, starting lap 3, holy smokes. So I don't know. It's a little bit of Need for Speed being Need for Speed in general. So I don't know. I suppose it comes to each player and their familiarity with racing games in general. I find that whenever I play a game like Need for Speed or a racer in general, the small details end up costing more in the long run. And I suppose the easiest way to describe it would be Mario Kart. When I first started playing it and hit the 200cc update, I had better success with my base vehicle than any other vehicle out there because I was used to how it handled. But I couldn't step back and beat 200cc just willy-nilly. I had to be able to learn and practice with the increased speed so that races would be doable. The number of mistakes at a higher speed cap are far harder to come back from than the, I suppose, just starting out 50cc. In the same vein, if I were to jump from this to the Carrera or the McLaren, I would end up with very different results. And that's just reality. That's not me trying to say one vehicle is better than the other or whatnot. It is just, I don't know the car. If I were to jump and drive my stepfather's 1-ton truck compared to a half-ton or a minivan, I would be out of my element, and driving the vehicle, while very possible, would also be, it would feel weird. And that's kind of the point I'm driving at. Anywho, there is one race left today, and then starting up tomorrow, we're going to be, next week, we'll be tackling the final round of Blacklist number 2's Bull. And Bull, I think, is going to be pretty fun. Given that Bull drives the McLaren, it's one of those rivals that is going to be very, he hits hard, and is going to be one of those, any mistakes could dramatically impact the end results. However, as with all things, I also have to bring a caveat into this. It's easier to beat one opponent than to beat 3. And it's because beating one opponent, if you make a mistake that hurts you, yeah, your opponent's going to end up getting an upper hand. But if your opponent makes a mistake, so too do you get an upper hand. And so the one-on-one nature of the boss races in Need for Speed Most Wanted are very easy to bounce back from comparatively to many of the later races. So, in order to keep things fairly okay, I'm going to attempt, I think, to do the milestones for Razor at the same time. Let me know what you think down in the comments, because if I'm honest, I want to really blitz this. I want to finish this series because I'm simply excited for it. And I want to prove once and for all that the Lexus is capable of doing anything that any other vehicle in this game could. And in that, stopping at this point just won't do. And so, I believe that when this challenge is complete, when all is said and done, that Need for Speed Most Wanted will go down as one of the best series that has been made for this channel, as well as one of the hardest overall series to make. Now, I admit, next week will mark the 1 year anniversary of starting this challenge. And I admit it, I didn't expect that this was going to take a full year to make. If I would have known that, I would have made each segment a little bit, I would have been putting a lot more into getting this series up and going and possibly made longer segments. But for those of you who have been keeping up with this for the last year, I thank you. Because you are the reason that this channel is still going today. And while we're on the final lap of this race, I want to thank everybody who has been supporting me over the last year and a half-ish. Because I know that this channel has had some growing pains. But I believe that without the viewers, without the people watching this or, checking in every once in a while, I wouldn't be where I am today. So thank you, everybody. Anywho, with all of this said and done, I hope you all have a fantastic day. I hope you all follow your dreams. I hope you all achieve your goals. And I hope that you can take a look at this video, this series, and see that perseverance is really all that's necessary. Show what you are truly made of. And do it with your head held high. Be good to one another. And I hope that you all have a good one. Man, I can't believe that we're here. Blacklist number 2 Bull is done as of next week. Holy mola.